So, South Africa is 30 years into its democracy, but it's grappling with this really big question. What ever happened to the promise of a truly multilingual nation? It seems the gap between the country's constitutional ideals and what's actually happening on the ground is wider than ever. Let's dig into why that is. Back in 1996, the new constitution was this huge deal, a landmark achievement. By officially recognizing 11 languages, the whole idea was to heal the deep, painful divisions of the past, and, like it says in the preamble, to free the potential of each person. This was a massive promise of inclusion, of dignity, a totally new beginning. But, of course, what's written down on paper and what happens in real life can be two totally different things. And a moment during a recent ceremony for members of parliament really brought this tension into sharp focus, sparking some outrage and a really difficult national conversation. And this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of the emotion of that moment. Deputy Minister Peace Mambe was talking about how a member of parliament chose to take her oath in isiXhosa. But instead of being a moment of pride, she was, in Mambe's words, belittled for it by the Chief Justice. What really stung for Mambe and for others was the silence that followed from language experts and advocates. It was deafening. So, look, this whole situation isn't just some one-off story. It's a symptom of a much, much deeper problem. It really forces us to ask, after 3 whole decades, why is that constitutional promise of language equality still so far from being a reality? And this isn't just about how people feel or those isolated incidents. The numbers, well, they paint a pretty clear and pretty stark picture of a system that's failing its multilingual mandate. Okay, so this slide really cuts to the chase. It's all about the money, right? Or in this case, the lack of it. A whopping 73% of state institutions have either no budget at all or not nearly enough money for language services. Multilingualism has pretty much become an unfunded mandate. Then you've got to ask, okay, who's actually in charge of this? Who's accountable? The answer is almost nobody. Just 3 government departments, Justice, Education, and Arts and Culture, have senior officials, we're talking chief director level, who are focused on language. Just 3. And this is what happens when you don't have the budget or the people in charge. When the state tries to talk to its citizens, it mostly speaks in one language. English just dominates everything. Meanwhile, most of the indigenous languages are barely used, hovering at around 20%. This quote, it's so powerful and pretty much sums up the whole problem. When languages don't have institutional power, when they don't have a budget or high-level champions, they aren't being served by the system. They're being consumed by it. So we've looked at the numbers, we've looked at the policy failures, but this stuff has real-world consequences for real people. This isn't just some academic debate. It affects every single part of a citizen's life, from the courtroom to the classroom to the doctor's office. Let's just break down what this actually means in day-to-day life. In court, it could mean you literally don't understand the charges against you. In school, kids are being denied the best way to learn, which we know is in their mother tongue. In a hospital, it can lead to fatal miscommunications. And for basic government services, that Batho Pele, that people first promise, it just becomes an empty slogan if you can't even understand the forms. Okay, so with this huge, long-standing problem, what's being done? Well, recently, a bunch of leaders and experts from all over the country got together for a national language summit. They were determined to finally figure out a way forward. And the timing here is really important. It's not a coincidence this happened now. In the 30th year of democracy, the whole point of the summit was to connect the language issue directly to that original promise of human rights and dignity for every single South African. And their goal? It was big. It was ambitious. The Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture said this wasn't just another meeting. It was meant to be a decisive national intervention, a plan to create one unified strategy that actually works across all parts of society. And they knew they couldn't do it alone, so they brought everyone to the table. Key players from the government, academics, tech experts, the private sector, and community organizations. This was all about building a solution together. All right, so they've laid out the problem. What's next? Well, the summit was all about moving from just talking to actually doing something, focusing on creating real, concrete outcomes. And let me tell you, this was more than just another meeting where people talk and nothing happens. They actually came away with some concrete results. They adopted a formal declaration, they set up a roadmap for a new national policy, and, probably most important, they created a brand new task team to make sure it all gets done. And here they are, the people who are going to be leading the charge. This is the first ever national task team. It's made up of leading experts who were elected to champion language in all the critical areas. We're talking justice, health, technology, business, you name it. This team really represents a new hope for some serious high-level accountability.
This quote from Deputy Minister Mabe really captures the hopeful feeling coming out of the summit. She said that day was proof that everyone is now serious about closing this language divide. Creating the task team, adopting the declaration, it all points to a real commitment to finally turn all this policy talk into practice.
So here we are. There's a new plan. There's a new team ready to get to work. But it all brings us back to that one central question. After 30 years of waiting, is this finally going to be the push that makes the promise of a multilingual South Africa a reality for all of its people? Only time will tell.